aloitetaan ihan hetken kuluttua. I think we can slowly start. Dear friends and colleagues, good morning and welcome to this seminar focusing on European democracy and the challenges and future prospects. It's a privilege to stand here before you as we delve into critical issues that shape the course of our continent in the future. My name is Jelena Simic, and I work as the project manager in Kalevi Sorsa Foundation, managing our development cooperation project funded by the Finnish Ministry for Foreign Affairs. Our project supports democracy in the Western Balkans through youth education and strengthening the cooperation of Western Balkan think tanks. Therefore, I'm also particularly delighted that we have here today representatives from our partner organizations from Albania, Bosnia, and North Macedonia. What else? I think we all kind of agree on the fact that democracy is fundamental to our societies, but recent trends across Europe have sparked concerns due to the concentration of power, erosion of the rule of law, and the emergence of authoritarian and populist movements, posing significant threats to the foundational principles of democracy. Today, our aim is to address these challenges head-on. How should Europe confront these issues and how can we overcome them? We are honored to have former President Tarja Halonen deliver the opening address. Her perspective on the state and future in democracy in Europe will surely enrich our discussions. Following President Halonen's speech, we will turn our attention to the panel discussions. The first panel will explore the youth migration from Western Balkans and how it affects the region's societies as well as the whole of Europe. The second panel will delve into the future of EU enlargement and its implications for the EU, applicant countries and the whole continent. But without further ado, I will now give the floor to President Halonen. You're welcome.
I try to disturb that how they are closing the doors. I think it's automatic. I think that you have to kind of press the button and don't try to make it with violence. Okay. Okay.
Yes. You can use this mic. Okay. Good.
You have made now such kind of...
Yeah, it's a labyrinth.
It's a labyrinth. Yeah. Can I use this one?
Yes.
This.
Yeah,
okay,
this
thanks.
one.
So, dear friends, my first advice to you is that don't trust that the sports will give the better condition. This has happened in gym. Okay. Or at least you have to remember your age. Okay. So I'm very happy to be here for many reasons, because I have been over 50 years in the politics, and so the countries what you have mentioned here I remember from the different parts of the history. And for instance, concerning Albania, I have been there in that time the capital, where was the main house was divided in two parts because it was still war going on. And now you are here. That's it. I mean, the many other things, but there are also sad stories, because we are in Sorsa Foundation. I have to tell that I was as a very young. I don't wondering why the Prime Minister Sorsa could take me, but anyway, I was his assistant then. It was 1974 when he sent me to Israel and also to the West Bank, and he said only that I have the feeling, Tarja, that you might have a lot to do in the future with also this area. I had a terrible headache when I came back from there. And that was a good time, and so I said that I'm happy that I can never be in any way trying to solve the problem. And as you know today, we all have been in wrong. That we all have been some kind of the connection to the Middle East, and we will be. So it's one of our tasks. But it's also good things. This year. A historic number of the voters globally are heading to the polls. Almost half of the world's population will be voting and we counted that in 64 countries. And then, of course, we have also the European Union. So these elections are taking place in a situation where voter turnout and membership of political parties, as well as trust in politicians and institutions, are declining. In every region, democracy is under attack by autocratic leaders and populist and extremist movements. The digital age also brought new challenges, but also, of course, the new possibilities. The spread of disinformation harms democracies and hampers the ability of voters to take informed decisions. When in the old time you said that whether we have information enough, today we have too much information that we could always select that which are the real good information. So in a democracy, of course, elections are just one tool among others. Free elections are like a thermometer that measures the situation at one moment. But this year is a vital opportunity to discuss and assess the present situation and the importance of solid democratic structure. Analysis is needed on how democracy, human rights, the rule of law, and good governance, or I also like to use, not because I came last night at 1 o'clock from Germany, but I love more the term rättsstat than the rule of law. I like to call this system. We can anyway, we can try to find the ways how to strengthen and better serve society as a whole, all these parts. Dear friends, today the focus is on democracy in Europe. The European Union is founded on a set of the common principles of democracy, the rule of law, and fundamental rights. According to the latest Global State of Democracy report, Europe continues still to show the highest democratic performance globally. But there have been quite important declines in several indicators of democratic performance in many of established the democracies in Europe. So the most common declines are the rule of law and freedom of the press indicators. Should we be worried? Yeah. Yes. But we must also be active for the democracy. I think that the challenges within Europe demonstrates that democracy is a continuous process. It cannot be taken for granted. It's not something what you do once and then you can be happy. You can be happy that you have done it, but you have been all the time in the process. The good news is that the report also shows the gaps between the European countries has started to shrink. Despite declines in Hungary and Poland, Central Europe was the center of democratic growth. Central Europe shows notably progress, especially when it comes to rule of law. The Nordic countries remain strong performers, but, for example, my own country, I love to take it as an example, the safety of the journalist has come a little bit more down in the latest report by the Reporters Without Borders. So we have been always happy to be one of the best. We are still, but not in that good way. It is also positive that the EU has demonstrated its ability to promote democratic resilience in member and non-member states, especially through the mobilization of support for Ukraine. Here, I would like also to highlight the work done in the Council of Europe. You remember this ODA organization in Strasbourg. So I was involved in establishment of the mechanism to monitor the compliance of candidate states if you are planning to get an engagement. So the both sides will be very eager to promise whatever. Like in the melody they say that I want to bring the moon from the sky. When you are married, a little bit the same, but then when you have been a few years married, so sometimes it's difficult to remind that if you should take a rubbish basket to the outside. And this is the same with all the organizations. When they are eager to come, the members, everything is promised. Yes, we do it. Then later on, they said, you are always critical to me, and you have forgotten what I have done. And so take this the same way. They are human relations. So I think that we have to see our dear EU members, already those who have legalized their relationship with the others, that what should be done. So I like to look at the developments also from a global perspective. History has shown us in Europe and elsewhere that democracy, human rights, peace and security are interlinked. According to the studies, democratic societies are more likely to be stable, guarantee human development and enable change without violence. Autocracies are more prone to instability and conflict. Today, 2,000 million people, I always want to say 2,000 people, and not 2 billion, because it sounds much less. 1/4 of the world's population are living in conflict areas. Geopolitical tensions are growing and inequalities between people are deepening. This development has gone hand in hand with the global weakening of the democracy. We can and we must harness democracy to rebuild trust and to empower people, to respect human rights, to achieve equality and stability, and also to guarantee that we will get also the sustainable development. So, the role of civil society is important. At the United Nations, it has been emphasized that our path towards 2030 and realizing sustainable development goals must be people-centered and participatory. This includes SDG 16 on peace, justice and strong institutions, and SDGs 5 on gender equality, for instance, but also the Agenda 2030 as a whole. So we knew it already from the beginning. Please come in. Yes, now you come. Okay. So I remember that that was one of the very important points what we noticed, that it's very good that if the presidents and prime ministers and all these high politicians are on board, but we cannot solve the SDGs if we have not all the people on board. And you have noticed that in many countries, also in Europe, sometimes we have not succeeded with elections so well concerning the SDGs. But then the people themselves have said that we want to get better cars, we want to know that how to make a more, how could I say, good vegetable meals and all kind of things. And then both the business system, what I didn't believe earlier, and also some other not traditionally so progressive groups, they can be helping us, supporting the SDGs. So, but dear friends, let's keep democracy at the top of the policy agenda and make sure that our versions of democracy are in good shape and deliver results. I'm very happy that there has been more attention on Europe and democracy in the Nordic countries. Last week, for example, I attended an excellent event organized by the Swedish Embassy on these topics. They have made a book called Depth and Size of the European Union in the Time of Turmoil. So I think that now when we have this Sorsa seminar here also, so it tells that we both, good neighbors, are active in this sense. A sustainable future needs a solid democratic structure in which every can fully participate. So I'm really very happy that you are here now on Monday morning early, and I hope some also in the internet with a cup of coffee. They are concentrating the challenges of this week and the next weeks in the future. So remember to vote.
Thank you, President, for your insights. I think you raised some of very important topics, and also a good reminder that we should kind of continuously work on democracy, and it's never really done. But now we will move on to our first panel discussion, European Migration and Democracy towards Progress or Backsliding. If I could have our panelists Hamza, Ledjon, Katerina and Antti here in front.
Should we sit in that order?
Sorry?
Should we sit in that order?
Sit in whichever order. Good. Yes, just a few words before we start. First of all, welcome, and thank you very much for coming here to Finland and to Helsinki. We have here with us Ledjon Shahini. He is the director of an Albanian think tank, Qemal Stafa Foundation. Then we have Hamza Pecar. He is the project manager of a Bosnian think tank Forum of Left Initiative. And then we have Katerina Kasovska, who is project manager in North Macedonian think tank Progres Institute for Social Democracy. And last but not least, we have Antti Häikiö, a senior official at the Ministry of Interior of Finland. As mentioned previously, this discussion is based on Kalevi Sorsa Foundation's recent report titled Brain Drain, Weak Democracy and Limited Prospects for the Future. Case studies on youth migration in Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and North Macedonia. The publication can be found over there at the end and also online. Yeah, so a bit about the publication. So the authors, we had 6 authors, out of which 3 are now here. So the report is written or was written by 6 experts from the Western Balkans. And Ledjon, Shahini, Hamza, and Katerina are 3 of the writers. And in the publication, the authors delve into migration statistics and literature to uncover historical and current immigration trends in these 3 countries. They evaluated democracy using political participation, institutional trust, and rule of the law data. And also, additionally, they linked immigration patterns with democratic indicators and explored how social political conditions influence youth migration decisions. Exploring the link between youth migration and democracy is especially important in the Western Balkans, as it shapes the region's future quite importantly. It's estimated that in this decade, Western Balkans will lose 1 million of young, talented, and educated individuals, that they will move abroad. So obviously this kind of poses significant obstacles to regional progress and development. But also I think it's good to remember that this is not only a Western Balkans issue, but it's a broader European concern. For example, while labor migration might seem like a solution for EU member states, it's member states that are losing their population is declining, but so it may be a solution for them, but simultaneously it impacts the countries of origin, and the repercussions there might be quite the opposite. And also, if immigration destabilizes economies and democracies in neighboring region, it could also have serious repercussions for the entire of EU and Europe. But our panelists will provide insights in their country chapters and situations in their country. So we can now move on. And Ledjon, you can start with main findings from Albania. The microphones are on already.
Thank you, Elena. Good morning, everyone. Before I start, I'll start with just the introduction of my daily job and to relate to the latest movement of the demographic in Albania. I'm a professor of economics of development, and when I speak about development in the world, I start with 10 poorest country in the world and 10 poorest country in Europe. And we 3 are in the 10 poorest country in Europe, not in the world, but in Europe. The same happens even when we do, so there we understand what's the meaning of development, for what they suffer and for what we suffer. For them, it's hunger, clean water, and other things like that. In our case, we discuss about informality, corruption, institutional sustainability, and so on. Now we are in Helsinki, and we are, again, 3 of us in 10 poorest country in Europe, and Finland in 10 richest one in Europe. So, even when we speak about democracy, it's a bit different in EU members and in our countries. In EU members, the democracy now is mostly related with the increase of extreme groups, which are taking more and more power. In our countries, the problem is related who is going to speak about democracy. Because what has happened during these 30 years, at least in Albania, after the communism system, we had three group of migration, or three period of migration. The first one, it was in 90s when the young men people moved mostly in Italy and Greece massively. In 2000, they go to the family stabilization, so the family moved outside of the Albania. So even the women start to move outside of Albania. And the third one, which has started, let's say, in 2015 and later, it's related with the young group that are well educated, and they are even lower than 18 years old, so they go even in early age. And we are having this problem in significant numbers. It's not that we are speaking about small numbers. Jelena just mentioned before, approximately 1 million is the number in Western Balkan of young generation that have left Albania, Western Balkans, but I think it's bigger. This year we are waiting for the new census data. We did the census in November last year, but the data hasn't published yet. And we are skeptic about it. So we don't know the numbers exactly, but from 2.9 that it's supposed to be, we are waiting for the new data, and we'll see how the numbers will be, but much more important is not about the number, but it's about the pyramid of population. So we are waiting for big changes there. This means that taking in consideration not having too many young people, and what is more significant, a lot of people working in public institutions, it goes in a kind of dependency when it comes to the voice, speaking for democracy, speaking for the rights and things like that. So if we don't have young generation, if we don't have the educated one, if we don't have the voice, we cannot speak about democracy. This is the problem that our countries are facing. Coming back now to the publication that we did last year with the support of Kalevi Sorsa, we did a deep analysis of all, or let's say the main reports that exist regarding the democracy, good governance, youth, quality of life, and so on. So there are many indexes, and we did an analysis of most of those to understand where the Balkans stays. And of course, in most of the cases, we are in the same area, all of us. Sometimes one of the countries is a bit upper and the other a bit less, but in general, we are in the same stage. And after that, we go a bit farther, and we did a questionnaire with the youth generation in Albania to understand mostly the reasons, because there are done yearly the analysis regarding the reasons why the young generation leave the country, but we went a bit more to relate that one even with the democracy, so how they are involved in the political life. And honestly speaking, the numbers are very, very low. So the young generation doesn't participate in political life, in general, I mean. And it seems they are a lot skeptic about it. And when we analyze the reasons, it's not only the economic reason, because for many years we have thought that is economy, that they leave the country. But it seems that the young generation, it's not living only for the economy, the quality of the life, I mean, regarding the economy. And if we see the data, it seems that one of the main reasons is the education quality related with the career improvement. And when we go to more analysis, we saw that one of the challenges that the Western Balkan countries had, and in this regard even the Albanian, is that 25% of the young generation, they are not in the education system, not in training, So net, it's called the group of this young generation, compared with 13.7% that it was in EU. So it's approximately twice bigger, the young generation not involved in education training, or those that are called passive young generation, which is significant one. And we went even more deeper to analyze why it's happening that one. And one of the main reasons is because of mismatch of the education with the labor market. In Western Balkan countries, and I can speak for sure in Albania, it's missing the vertical education. So people, the young generation, they don't take the right education compared with the labor requirements, the demand. So one of the main reasons why they leave the country is related even because they do tertiary education, they go to university, but they don't find a job. They have to do completely something else, not what they have studied about. So this was one of the main reasons. And it goes like 28% compared of the young generation says that this is one of the main reasons, compared with 24% that leaves Albania, or they think to leave Albania for the economic reason. So this one is higher compared to the economic one. And another high percentage thinks that the reason why they want to leave Albania is because of the health system in Albania. So doing this kind of calculations of numbers, it seems that the quality of life, the sustainable development of the country is one of the main reasons why the young generation leave the country. In this regard, the focus of the government has exactly to be focused on that. In Albania, we are taking some measures regarding the economic situation. We are increasing year after year the average salary, which is a good one. We are trying to create the new sectoral development because in the stage of development that the country is, we have to find the productive sectors of development, not anymore the industrial production sectors or agriculture sectors, but we have to go in. Right now, the focus is in tourism or IT sector, which have high productivity for the young generation. And in this regard, there are some significant steps that have been taken from the government, but at the same time, even some support need to be done even from the EU countries. So, I'll stop. I'll have even maybe a bit time during the questions period. But from the EU countries, and I'll finish with that, we have to take in consideration to have more programs for youth generation to stay in the countries, not just to create them possibility to work in other countries of EU, but even to have programs in the country, and why not even some trainings that fulfill supply-demand equilibrium in their country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ledjon. I hope we have time to continue in the discussion part. But now let's move on to Hamza and main findings from Bosnia.
Okay, so I would like to start by thanking Kalevi Sorsa and Jelena especially for all the contribution and engagement which you have in Western Balkans. And I was thinking how to start, and I changed it at the start based on the President's introduction. And I would like to start with one point in agreement with what you said. And the point of this publication, which we found out, is that because the democratization, the whole process, the migration was the result, but as time goes by, it's becoming a problem and is becoming the cause of why the democratization is not happening at all, or it's backsliding. So it's like an enchanted circle which is happening. And I mean, we are the countries in process of democratizations. We are countries in transition, and we are backsliding a lot. And there is one saying which I wanted to mention, which is quite popular in our countries after we managed to get democracy in our countries following the fall of the communism, and when Tito died, and Tito, the lifelong president of communist Yugoslavia. And it's quite popular to say that during Tito's time, you could not speak about country or politics, but you had everything. And nowadays you can speak about everything and you can curse on everyone, but you don't have anything. So that's the mood which people have and opinions which are happening, which is quite showing on what is currently happening. So to start with the publication which we had, I would start with one short historical perspective which we need to have. We have a really long tradition of migrations in Western Balkans. And in modern times following the wars in the 19th, there are two big milestones which happened. And when speaking about the tradition during Yugoslavia, when Tito was still alive, and I heard from the talks outside something similar which happened in Finland with the Estonians. They would come to Finland and then return back to home. That's something which we also had in Yugoslavia. We would go to Western Germany, we would go outside, and then they would return back. But as time goes on, people are bringing families outside. They are not considering returning back. We had two big milestones which happened in the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina. One is obviously the war since 1992 until 1995. More than 1 million people left the country after the war, and majority of them did return, but they were internally displaced. They never, big majority of them never returned to their original place of the living. And to highlight that, that's even inside our constitution, the need to end the whole peace process is, it will basically be ended the moment when everybody who are internally displaced will return back. And by the looks of it, that will never happen, and the only way to finish that whole process is when biologically people die who live there, so there's nobody to return, and then that process will be done. The second big milestone which we had is 2006 and 2008, and that is directly connected with the root cause of the problem, which I will mention later on. And those two dates represent the shifting point in Western engagement in Bosnia and Herzegovina. 2006 is the point where United States withdrew the huge leverage which they had inside country, where they stopped interfering with the democratization processes, which backslide the process because we were not stable democracy, not a stable country today, nonetheless, at that time. And that started a next boom of people wanting to leave. And the 2010 is interesting because that's the time where Germany and EU enabled and introduced visa liberalization, and Schengen was introduced. And we can go freely to European Union, which basically made a huge boom for young people to leave and try to find job outside. I made a quite meticulous way I want to speak. All of this basically resulted that now there's 56% of population of Bosnia and Herzegovina citizens who are living outside of the country. In European Union, 56% of the people are living outside. Out of those 56, around 45 to 50% of them are born in the country, while that other percentage, they are the offsprings of those people. And out of that number which left, 50% of them are people who are under 39. So quite, young population, good workforce to have. Also, this number, it's always something around 50. Everything is 50-50 in our case. Throughout the years, we had young people having on average 50 to 55% wanting to leave the country, even today. It went from 47, 65 to nowadays 50-something%. So young people still do want to leave the country. And before this, the main reason for young people wanting to leave was obviously the money. They wanted to earn more. It was they couldn't find a job, etc. But nowadays, it starts to shifting a bit. It's no longer that money is the main concern which they have. They can probably find job in our countries, but it's that they question, as Ledjon mentioned, those indicators, the quality of life, educational system, healthcare insurance, etc., which they are having problem with. They will, even if, and one friend of mine said, look, even if I make a lot of money in Bosnia and Herzegovina, I don't know where to spend it, qualitatively. I don't know what I can buy that's a good of a quality that will be a good investment for the future for me. So that's a big problem which they are concerned with. That's that stability and quality of life which democracies and in Europe we should have, and something which we are in recent period lacking of. Another problem which this lack of stability is having, and now we are speaking about the problems, we are no longer speaking about how to solve something. This is a crisis management. We are already in problem. For example, in order to work for our pension fund, we need to have 3 workers on 1 pensioner in order to have stable pension funds. At the moment, that's 1.5 worker on 1 pensioner in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is a great burden which we have, because a lot of young people left and there aren't enough people to cover the pension funds which we have. That's one blatant example which explain all of that. And now to stress out this number even more, speaking about not people inside the country, but people outside of the country, the young people, 14% of our GDP is directly connected with remittances and funds of children from European Union sending to their parents back to the countries. 14%. That is a huge amount of money. But that is also a short-term boost which you will get, because once those parents die, they will not send those monies to the country. So, I mean, nobody is thinking long-term about it. Throughout the years, in 1991, when the wars were starting in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we had 4.4 million people. In 2013, where we had the last census, there were 3.5 million. We didn't have census since, but based on some of the research findings and methodologies, people are expecting that there are around 2.7 million people in Bosnia and Herzegovina left nowadays. And to make one metaphor to explain how many people leave country each year, 36,000 people leave country each year from Bosnia and Herzegovina. And that's a small town in Bosnia and Herzegovina. A small town or a big municipality. Each year leaves the country, which is quite bad. And the main countries in which they go are usually Germany, Austria, in some cases Switzerland as well. And those countries, I mean, they pay tribute to us. In Switzerland, our NGO hunting people, you can apply for Bureau for Unemployment in Bosnia and Herzegovina for Germany. They are looking for you just to move to be there. So that's a big effort which they are making. And even with all of that, there are some things which did show that this approach, that stability and quality of life is, and this will be my final point in a way, is that the stability and quality of life is a big concern for people, and something which they are trying to find in Western Balkans and in especially Bosnia and Herzegovina. Every young person which leaves country is casting a ballot, because that is his revolt against the system which didn't hear their concerns. So every young person who leaves is just empowering the regressive forces which will continue, and they will maintain the force which they have. And Canton of Sarajevo is one bright example which happened in our country, and that's a capital region of the country, and that is actually the only region in Bosnia and Herzegovina which had a surplus of population in over a decade. 1.1 increase of population inside the country. And the main reason for that is that Social Democrats, together with the Liberals, they formed the Progressive Coalition bloc inside that region, and they introduced several welfare programs which helped maternity leave, education. They would subsidize kindergartens, etc. And they renewed the mandate. And when that happened, after the second mandate, which they renew, we did saw that some other regions inside the country started to implement some of the policies which were introduced there, because the outcry happened. Look, they are getting maternity subsidies, they're getting fees for kindergartens, which are expensive. Why can't we get those? But at the moment, only in Canton of Sarajevo we have surplus of population, and it is directly connected with the increase of standards of living which happened over time. So, yeah.
Thank you, Hamza. Okay, and now Katerina, what's the situation in North Macedonia? Yes, those were first.
Good afternoon. It is still a panel discussion, but it's easier for me when I don't hold the mic. Thank you, Jelena. Thank you for engagement. Thank you for the invite. It's an honor to be here. And thank you for the opportunity to share our findings and to bring closer some of the challenges and issues that Western Balkan countries faces to the Finnish audience. Also for finding this as an important topic to discuss about. The support of Kalevi Sorsa Foundation has been always very important in the democratic processes of the Macedonian society. Concerning North Macedonia, the country is historically known as a country of immigrants, and approximately 700,000 of Macedonians live abroad, or around 30% of the Macedonian population. But the immigrations has always been discussed through an economic perspective, meaning and speaking only about the salaries, hour wages, and poverty. Recently, the discussion has shifted towards analyzing a wider perspective, and shifted towards analyzing seeking a higher standard of living, including a better socio-economic and political environment. There is a population decline as everywhere in North Macedonia, and according to the census data in 2021, people aged 15-29 make 18% of the overall population. Less than 20 years earlier, in 2001, this percentage was 24, and compared to other age groups, young people are the most affected group by the population decline. Although there are several reasons for population decline, for the youth, the leading cause by far is immigration. In this study, we have tried to show the socio-political motives for immigration are not non-existent or unnoticed. But this is challenging to accurately measure the causal relationship between overall level of democracy in the country and youth immigrations. For the purposes of this publication, we have conducted a survey, which result provides some indications on youth perceptions and their views on the state of democracy and how it functions in the country. Initially, almost half of our respondents expressed their desire to move out from the country. When asked if they think that North Macedonia is a democratic country, more than half of the respondents answered with partially yes. This implies that young people in Macedonia recognize some lacking elements in the institutions and the society. We made a comparison between those who would like to move out the country and those who already moved out. And the youth that had already moved out have significantly less trust in the democratic institutions, with none of them trusting the democracy in the country, compared to 10% of those wanting to move out. Both numbers alarming low. When assessing the degree of the corruption, nepotism, and partisanship of the society, average score was over 4, and always higher among those who already moved away. The issue that youth feel most negatively about is the partisanship of the society. Regarding the support for the European Union, from our respondents, 91% believe that North Macedonia... Jelena, can I have a water? Yes. Thanks, my mouth went. Believe that North Macedonia should be a part of the European Union, and this is a positive sign. I'm sorry. Because the general support for the European Union in North Macedonia has been declining in recent years. Also, the democracy in North Macedonia is classified as flawed democracy or a hybrid regime because of many reasons, although declaratively the country is a democratic country. We mentioned also in our research that about the youth and their participation in the political processes, and although the participation in the political processes is guaranteed, but it is not in practice encouraged or enabled. Having in mind also here the other preconditions that make democracy works, the continuous decline in democracy is an indication that the system in the country does not address all needs and demands of the citizens. This especially is true among young people, who is the least satisfied with the political situation and social situation in the country. That can make us conclude that the general improvement of the democratic climate may reduce the trends of immigration. Socio-political motives are deeply intertwined with economic ones, but maintaining a functioning democracy and open and real fight against corruption, nepotism, and partisanship will for sure make young people to think twice before leaving. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you for all the insights from the region. But now let's turn to Finland. Antti, how is the potential weakening of democracy and other social and political implications in the countries of origin taken into consideration in the Finnish immigration policy, or is it?
Thank you, dear President Tarja, Mr. Ambassador Tenderuar, Zonia de Sotri, draga dama I gospodo. I don't like to sound conclusive or representing the voice of the government. I rather would like to challenge a little bit the thinking in this Balkan way, like you were able to do it in your three very interesting parts of your study. Congratulations, first of all, Kalevi Sorsa Foundation and you who did the report. Very interesting, and I hope that the discussion will continue. I come from Ministry of Interior, indeed, but from the international aspects of the Ministry of Interior, where I have been working 20 years. But I have been working in Balkans 31 years, and I don't know which has had more impact in my current thinking. Is it 30 years in the Balkans or 20 years in the Ministry of Interior? What I have been working in the Balkans from the Ministry of Interior is what we call in Finland civilian crisis management. Sometimes I feel that I have been working more in the building industries, because I have been working with the peace building, confidence building, state building, nation building, institution building, and capacity building. And how much buildings there are a lot of buildings. If you go to Tirana, Skopje, Sarajevo, Pristina, Belgrade, you see a lot of beautiful buildings. But is it the same building we have been working with? I think this is one of the big questions we have to ask ourselves also in the European Union, that are these missions we have had there already 30 years and 30 years after the war, have they been leading to the normalized societies which are functioning societies as we had the hope in the beginning? I'm afraid that we can't answer only positively after we heard the figures from the youth indicators in the three Western Balkan countries. I have been working there in the UN, in NATO, in OSCE, and in the EU, in all four main actors, but I'm not sure if we did only good work there. Looking at the situation that we are still running a crisis management mission under the EU's foreign and security policy in Bosnia, and we are running a crisis management mission under the EU's foreign and security policy in Kosovo. When the war was finished in Bosnia soon 30 years ago, and in Kosovo in the coming days 25 years ago. I like very much the way how President Tarja, in your style always, you went to the human approach with the relations. And sometimes I have been asking myself that, you know, are we a little bit like in the family with teenagers, where the EU is saying in Pristina that you must take the responsibility, and the teenagers in the family are saying that, yes, but you don't give us the responsibility. And we go around and around the same topics. And billions or thousands of millions are spent in rule of law system, but the obvious results for the young people are not the same as we are reporting. Perhaps we are reporting wrongly back to Brussels and the member states in the reports we are writing. Having the missions in Western Balkans still, do you know that there are EU member states who are paying the government of Kosovo for sending prisoners to the prisons in Kosovo? Germany, Netherlands, Denmark, Belgium, and you have perhaps heard about Italy having the deal with Albania on migrations to be located in Albania. My question again is this the right way to manage and govern EU accession and integration process if we already at the same time start actually using the Western Balkan countries for the interests we have in our, I would say, home policy? Before we have granted the successful process of the accession, we already start again using the Western Balkan countries for the interest that the EU member states, individually at least, number of the EU member states are having in countries when they have the full prisons or they have to follow the new so-called migration pact and find a location outside the EU countries for the coming migration camps. Is voting the answer? Of course, you know, we want to believe in elections. But if you are a young person in Western Balkans, you have been voting every second year in elections organized by the OSCE. This year, presidential elections, next year, parliament elections, then you have the municipal elections, and again the same starts from the third year, presidential elections and so on. I have been there organizing the very first free elections, as we called them, 25 years ago. Young persons, those now in the springtime, who graduate from their high schools. You know, this is the time when the young people are very much waiting for putting the white hat on and leaving the school behind, looking for the new life to come. Those young people who were 18 years old, the time when the Kosovo War, the last war of the Western Balkans, ended, they are now 43 years old. And they haven't seen those beautiful things promised to them, what they were actually expecting when the war was over. The first free elections were organized. And now the blame and the mirror, I put it in front of myself. We in Finland, we are part of the 27 European member states who are responsible for foreign security and defense policy, running the missions. But should we change the strong hugging of foreign policy and security policy, should we change it from the security and defense perspective to the simply social economy and employment basis rather than the security and defense crisis management label as we still are running there? This in practice would actually mean then a change from the EU member states-based policy to EU Commission-based policy, Commission with the requirements. I think I finish here. I hope I was able to challenge with your thinking, maybe with some positive or negative examples, but let's go then to those ones who really know the topics and come from the countries and go to the lively discussion and questions. Thank you.
Thank you, all of our panelists. Very important and interesting topics were raised. We have still 5 minutes, so not a lot, which is mainly due to my poor time management. But I think at this point we could, if there's questions from audience, we could take them. There's one from Brendan. I'll give you my mic because there's not.
Thank you, Jelena, and thank you to all the speakers. Antti, you brought up unemployment. I would like to, there was no statistics on unemployment, but that is surely a major variable in the equation. Can our other panelists maybe throw a little bit of light on that?
I think unemployment is included in the report, but if all of you can give us some numbers from your countries, can you can start, Ledjon?
Okay. Unemployment, it's a problem, but the reason of existing unemployment, it's much more important to be analyzed. Because as I start in the beginning, the main problem is the mismatch of the demand and supply in the labor market. So if we see the labor force participation, and if we go to the category of young generation, it's very low, the labor force participation. If I'm not wrong, it's 56%, which it comes for some reasons. One has been the low average salary when they just enter in the market, in the labor market. In general, most of the private sector, they pay them very low in the beginning, and this is one of the main reasons why they don't enter in their sector, but they start going even in the sectors like call center, because we have a lot of call centers in Albania, in Italy, Germany, and mostly, and they are much more paid there. I mean significant payments compared with what they will take in the first sectoral job. So this is one reason. The second one is related with the demographic shift of the population. We have all the population going to be centralized in Tirana. So Tirana is going, if we took Tirana Durrës, which is 30-kilometer distance, but there are two biggest cities in the country, and we put Hamza, which is in the middle, it's more than 0.5% of the population, just in one region. And all the population is going to be concentrated there, and the young generation is going there, which left us in a very big difficulty regarding the sectors that we are going to increase. The tourism in Albania is a lot focused in the seaside area, which is in the south. But if you go in the seaside area in autumn and winter, you don't see nobody there, which is a big problem for us. This year we are having some contracts with countries in the Eastern Asian countries to bring people in the tourism sector from them, their countries. And I'm speaking here about, if I'm not wrong, the last contract is for 40,000 people coming. So it's not the problem of unemployment itself directly. So there are working place, but the problem is that the demand and supply, it's not in the right direction. And here we have to work a lot, especially in the training related to the sectoral need of the country, and also to the increase of the salary in the private sector. And the government itself has to work in the system, yearly system of insurance, security. Because right now we don't have a system that you can have the employees for the whole year, but you have to pay for them only in the period that they are employed and not the other months. But when the work is seasonal, it becomes a big problem. So these are, let's say, where the government can work. Thanks.
Thank you. And Hamza, what's the situation in Bosnia?
Well, I'll give you a funny anecdote also before I start there. When they go to Bureau for Unemployment to report each month or every quarter that they are still unemployed, to just give a call in so they have a free healthcare, etc. There are cases where people are standing in line for the office to open, and somebody would come and say, okay, can I pass the line because I'll be late to a job? So there's a grey economy as well, a lot of a grey economy which is happening. In our country, it's 16% of population are unemployed. Around 60% of those are reported to be youth, which are unemployed. But the important thing when we are still speaking about the unemployment, it's still the stability of those works. We are again returning to that point because usually, they get contract for 3 months, and then every 3 months they are, making those contracts again, and even after 4 years they wouldn't give them a stable contract so they can plan anything. They can't plan for kids, they can't plan for stability, they can't plan for anything. And one also important thing to note is that we are importing foreign workers. We have huge infrastructural programs, projects in the country. Not a single, each one of those led by our company, but people from Nepal, Turkey. Turkey is a huge importer of cheap workforce in our country. Pottery, to bricklayers, they can earn 4 times the average salary in our country, but you can't find them. If your washing machine is broken, you can wait up to 2 months for somebody to get a technician to come and fix it. And they pay a hefty price for them coming. So it's mostly that people are not interested, young people, in these vocational level jobs. It's not subsidized, not promoted enough. They think it's dirty, and they are looking for those higher paying jobs, which they can't reach overnight, but they are not given a chance for a stable progression because the system is set in a way that it's not stable itself, nonetheless to provide stability for them. Yeah.
Thank you, Hamza. Katerina, North Macedonia.
In North Macedonia, the unemployment rate is not high as it used to be. Like now it's around 14%, and 10 years ago it was 36% of unemployment. So now the situation at the labor market is very improved, but the problem is that over 90% of the unemployed are functionally illiterate, meaning that their qualification does not meet the needs of the labor market. That's the biggest problem in Macedonia, and unemployment in this regard.
Yes, so as we see, the numbers are quite similar to other EU member states, but then there are individual problems. Unfortunately, our time for this panel is running up. I would once again want to thank you, our panelists. Thank you. You are in the second one as well. Good. Okay. Now it's time for our second and final panel. And as we approach the EU elections, our topic is quite timely. We will be discussing the EU enlargement. And this panel discussion is also based on another Kalevi Sorsa Foundation's report, which is written by Matti Niemi and myself. But it will be published later this month. It's the title Table for 9 4 Scenarios for EU Enlargement and Reform. It will be in Finnish, though. Matti will introduce in more detail the publication, and he will focus particularly on how enlargement would impact the functioning of the European Union, as currently there are 9 countries that aspire to become members. In addition to Matti, we will have Ledjon again, and he will discuss how important or why is the EU enlargement so important to the Western Balkans. And then we have Mia-Petra Kumpula-Natri, former MAP and future, still MAP, future MP, and she will kind of discuss from the Finnish perspective what are the costs of enlargement. But without further ado, Mia, Petra, and Matti, if you could come front, and Matti, you can directly come here. I will open the PowerPoints. Full screen. Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Jelena. Good morning, everyone. Honorable President Tarja Halonen, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to present some of the findings from our upcoming report. And as you can see from the title, I don't know if you have ever called a restaurant and asked for a table for 9. They might say that it might be a bit difficult. We have to make some arrangements. But in the end, they will want to welcome you because it's good business for the restaurant. And this is, in summary, the thesis of our report. EU should be looking at enlargement in a very earnest way, but in order to make it happen, we need to reform the European Union as well. To summarize our findings in the beginning, we found out that through a certain scenarios, which I will go into detail next, EU enlargement is a geopolitical necessity for the current European Union. If we look at the Western Balkans, if we look at the 3 other countries that are in the pipeline, so to say, Ukraine, Moldova, and then Georgia, it is an opportunity that the current European Union cannot miss in terms of successful enlargement to these countries. But in order for enlargement to be as big of a success as the previous enlargement in 2004 and 2007 was, it should be met with reforms. The most pressing reforms needed within the European Union are in the areas of rule of law, in decision-making procedures, and within the EU budget. I will go into some details later, but just to reflect on President Halonen's excellent analogy to marriage vows, I think in recent years it has become more and more popular to make a renewal of your wedding vows after some time, 5-10 years. And this is something that maybe should be mandatory for EU member states as well, that you should, after some time of being a member, it should be mandatory to renew those vows and say, why do you love the EU so much that you want to still be a member? Well, anyways. Enlargement has historically been an economical success, and new member states would definitely benefit economically, even though there are numerous factors that afflict this. The last panel was discussing about the free movement of people, and we can already see that with the Western Balkans, this integration has taken some steps and not always with positive results, as was discussed. Are all the new member states ready for this quick accession that is now being talked, mainly in terms of security policy and geopolitical perspectives? This is an interesting question that I think our panelists can reflect even more deeply on. And then lastly, there has been a model developed, or several different sort of models developed and proposed that could be classified as a staged accession model, where you get the benefits and the responsibilities of a EU membership in a staged manner, and this could be something that could be useful in order to balance reform needs and benefits. In our report, we have, just to set out the scene, we have developed 4 scenarios for the future of the EU, let's say in 5 to 10 years time. And the way to approach these scenarios is to think of enlargement and reforms, and whether the European Union will have a favorable outlook towards enlargement and favorable outlook towards internal reforms. It's important to note here that we are not assessing each country by their own merits in this report. We rather take all the 9 countries as a whole, and we see that different countries will have different trajectories based on their own policies and the political developments in each of the countries. But here we are talking about EU 36 as if they are all of the 9 countries acceded to the European Union. To go through these scenarios, obviously in the first one, in the reformed EU 36, we have successfully completed the accession of these countries to the European Union, and we have also done some of the reforms here. And in our report, we find that this is the most beneficial for the current member states, because it will make the functioning of the European Union more smoother, and it will also have the economical and political benefits of stabilizing the foreign policy in the EU neighborhood region. If we do not do the reforms, then we find out that there's a big risk of yet another EU driven by crisis. And what we mean by that is that if the decision-making models are not reformed, then obviously with 36 people around the table, it will be harder to reach decisions. There is a important distinction here that the European Union will probably always thrive towards a unanimous decision, and that should be the goal. I mean, we should try to get everybody on board, but there should be room in the rules to make decisions by qualified majority if necessary, and that should become the norm. Otherwise, we will find ourselves muddling through, as has been said, and has been the method of EU policymaking in the last 20 years. If then we decide not to enlarge and we decide to close the doors, so to speak, or we decide that full enlargement is not in the cards, but rather we are creating a second tier of EU countries, for example, for Western Balkans, that will arrive as to the scenarios of Western EU closing ranks, so to say, or then the business as usual. And by Western EU closing ranks, we find that there could be some benefits. Obviously, you would have a more homogeneous group of countries, perhaps in areas such as climate change policies or R&D policies. You would have some benefits from a more homogeneous group of countries, and you would not have such big emphasis on traditional cohesion objectives or maybe agricultural policies and so on. But obviously then what you are lacking then is the neighborhood perspective, and we find that current EU member states, the so-called Western Europe, will need to spend quite a lot of money and effort in order to reach those same benefits, economical benefits or stability benefits in the neighborhood regions if we close the door to enlargement. And then business as usual, I will not go that much into depth, but there is always a risk that we will not reach a conclusion on these issues, and we will just continue debating this for years and years, and then we are not in the driver's seat in that development, I think would summarize. I have put here one graph from not from us, but from Brookings Institute. There are several reports out in the last 6 months or a year trying to gauge the outcomes or the impact of EU enlargement, and here is one of those. Basically, the main, maybe the one line here that you should look is Ukraine, right here on the left side. After Spain, we can see that Ukraine's GDP per capita, and I think this is pre-war levels, but it was 12% of EU average. In the Western Balkans, it's already closing to 35, 38, depends a bit on the year and the composition. But in Ukraine, in Moldova, it's about half of that. So there is a huge gap in the new member states, between the new member states and the EU average. And while the EU has been relatively good in integrating the member states in 2004 that joined in 2004, we still find that, or it's still found that there is a significant gap there to be reached. And if we don't change anything, this will certainly lead to quite an increase in the part of the EU funds that will go to new member states. And this is important, it should happen, but this just is here to illustrate some of the changes. I will then next go out, and I'm mindful of the time, but just to use a few minutes to go through the main reforms that we suggest for reforming the European Union. And if you find the text too long, I've tried to summarize with some nice emojis here as well. The need to reform the EU is shared, and it has been represented in very influential reports. Mainly the French and German Group of 12 published a report last year, which I recommend everybody to read. It shows that discussions on this will happen in the future. Previous EU enlargement rounds have been preceded or happened in conjunction with EU reforms or EU treaty changes, so this is something that should happen right now. The most important thing is conformity to joint values and the rule of law principle, and this applies to new member states, but it also applies to current member states. And I again refer to the analogy to renewing the marriage vows, so to say. Here, the most important things are that we should be able to decide on rule of law infringement procedures by qualified majority. Currently, only one member state can, or you need 2 member states opposing in order so you can stop the process, and we could make that a bit more effective, so that you could, for example, need a third of the countries in order to object such a procedure. EU exit should become a viable alternative. Currently, it's not very, as we've noticed from Brexit, it's obviously not the first choice for anybody, but it should be spelled out that if you don't want to be in the marriage, there's always the option of divorce. Obviously, the last result. I already explained something about the qualified majority, but qualified majority voting should be extended to the areas it's not now, and it should become the default with some safety nets for smaller member states in place. One of the interesting questions is obviously how much will enlargement cost, and we have tried to estimate this based on a few of the studies that have been made. We find that a possible cost for Finland in terms of net position, so not just how much we pay towards the European Union, but the combination of how much we pay and how much we receive, is a negative impact of 420 million euros per year, or about 76 euros per Finnish citizen per year. Is this a lot or not so much? It depends obviously on your point of view. It is quite a lot compared to our net position right now. I think Finnish net position is around 150 euros per citizen, so it's almost half of that. But if you think about the benefits in terms of enlarging the single market, increasing the stability in these regions, the overall safety and security of all of us, I think that puts it into a bit of a perspective. And obviously this number is based on many assumptions, and it will be subject to negotiations in the multi-annual financial frameworks and so on. I will take one more out of this, which is that I think was something that was mentioned in the panel, that there should be more efforts to grassroots forward internationalization of European societies. And what I mean by that is that we are still operating on a very member state and nation state based model. For example, European Union-wide media agencies or media outlets are still quite scarce and are missing, and I think it could be quite a low-cost, low-hanging fruit to achieve, to try to build a European society. And it's not just democracy, parachuted or whatever. It should be founded from the grassroots forward. This is quite crucial for the project to succeed. To sum up, the EU member states and institutions, they cannot avoid these important questions, and these will need to be decided in one way or another in the coming 5 to 10 years. Already the next multi-annual financial framework, which is being negotiated in 3 years' time about, it will need to reflect the cost, the preparation for this enlargement. Is there a credible alternative to enlargement? I think in this report we put forward that there is no credible alternative. There are different possibilities to do enlargement in a staged manner, but if the EU should say that full enlargement is not in the cards for the Western Balkans or Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia, I think we could see quite drastic responses in few years' time in the policies there. And the last panel discussed quite effectively the mismatch between the expectations and the outcomes that has already taken place in many of these countries. Rule of law and common values have been a problem for some of the EU member states after accession. We talk about backsliding, and this is maybe the number one thing that needs to be fixed. From the Finnish point of view, there are a few things, and I will finish here. Strengthening the common foreign and security policy through enlargement is something that Finland has sort of supported, and Finland has been one of the countries that's been very supportive towards enlargement previously and should continue to be in the future as well. For Finland, the representation of small and medium member states is crucial. Most likely is that every member state will still have their own commissioner. It's quite an easy fix to this. Obviously, it's just a very crude symbol of representation. Finland would need to do much more in order to build new coalitions and try to find new friends in the new member states. And this is something that we can do already now. And then we need to accept the costs associated with the enlargement and try to sort of put efforts into implementing new own resources and renew the focus a bit of how we spend our EU funds in order to for us the cost to be a bit more acceptable. But I will finish here, and I'm looking forward to the panel discussion, and maybe we can also discuss some of the questions here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Matti. We will discuss this further in the discussion part, but now I would give the floor to Ledjon. Why is it important that the Western Balkan countries join the EU, and what are the latest kind of developments in this sector, and also what are the risks if they don't? How do you see the situation?
Thank you, Elena. Thank you for the presentation. It's especially when we speak for the costs, directly brings to mind many things for me.
Is your mic on?
It's okay?
Yep.
Okay. So why it's important for Western Balkan countries to be part of the EU? Let me start with some numbers firstly. We have, as a region, we have 70% of the trade volume with the EU members. Half of our population is in EU members. And mostly of the tourists in our country are from the EU members country. Which means, even geographically, we are some way in the middle of Europe, which means that we are linked. We cannot live otherwise. So our destiny is to be part there. So we have to work for that, both even Western Balkan countries from themselves, even EU, to enlarge these countries in the EU group. So, saying that, from my point of view and what are the latest data, it seems that the enlargement will not change a lot the structure of our countries regarding the population, because one of the main discussions that have been so far is that if the Western Balkan countries will be part of the EU, all the people will leave the countries and so on. But who has had in plan to leave, they have left. So it's not a problem that the young generation cannot leave Albania, Bosnia, Macedonia. It's not the problem anymore. Hamza just mentioned before that there are many companies in Albania, Bosnia, Macedonia. They do job contracts in Germany, Swiss, and so on. So it's not a problem anymore. They can go to work in those countries. So in this regard, what is important for Western Balkan countries is the standard. And when we speak about the EU enlargement, we speak about standard. So mostly the EU enlargement is strongly related with quality of life, minimizing the corruption, informality, and from the perspective of EU, as I mentioned before, the Western Balkan countries day after day, year after year, are seen much more interest country for tourism because they are much more cheaper compared with EU countries. You mentioned in your presentation that we are approximately 30% of the average. So if we took all countries, there are from 30 to 50% of the EU average regarding the power PPP, purchasing power parity, which is one of the main indicators when we compare countries. So they are much more cheaper compared to the EU. And in this regard, we have to have even standards. So we cannot take in consideration only the fact that they are cheap, but they have to speak even for the quality, the standard. And let me take as an example, this year in Albania, in 2023, we had approximately 11 million tourists. So we are a country with less than 3 million, and the number of tourists were 11 million, approximately. But most of those come from EU countries, and we have to give them standards. We cannot treat as 30% of the average that we are regarding the economy. They have to be treated in the same average as an EU member. So one very important reason is related, as I mentioned, with the standard. The other important reason is the increase of skepticism. I have to say that Albania, I think, is in the top regarding the population perception be part of the EU. It's more than 99%, but even in other countries it is high. But we have to say that we have an increase of skepticism. And this increase of skepticism has been grown, especially after the latest development that had happened, starting with the conflict in Ukraine, because the meritocracy has been seen now that it's not that the point, but geopolitics is the point. So this is one very important one. The second is the high dilemma of having a veto of one country. This one has increased a lot the skepticism. We had the story with Greece, before with Macedonia, now with Albania, and in the general population it seems, okay, always will be one EU member that will say, no, I don't want. So it will never happen that we will be part. It will just be a kind of game that always some of the countries will say no, no, no. So, and this is one of the main points which has been mentioned even in the presentation, where the EU has to work a lot, I think. So, not having the veto in the process. And a third one that is very important too is even the new methodology. Even if we start analyzing, it doesn't change a lot regarding to the concept, but for the people it has been seen that, okay, we'll finish one stage, they'll say, okay, you have to start the other, and this means that we'll be part of the EU when even Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia will be part of this table, so in that time maybe 9 of the countries will enter all together, or maybe it will never happen. So even that they want to be part, they see that with skepticism. And this is influencing a lot to the young generation to leave the country, because when you speak with them, they say, yeah, okay, but I don't think that I'll achieve to be part of the EU during my working life. I don't know what will happen after 15 years, but during the period that I'll be in the labor force, I don't see that our countries will be member. So the skepticism in the EU generation, it's a big problem for us, related even with the first discussion that we had. Regarding the region itself, another problem is related with security. The postpone of the enlargement has created even the increase of extreme rights or influences of other countries increase in our region, which is not good. And I was discussing in the morning with a colleague from Macedonia. They had yesterday the new elections, and we just took the new message from the new president who called Macedonian, not North Macedonia, but Macedonia, just creating a conflict with Greece directly. So it happens only yesterday, which we don't know how it goes, because if we start creating this kind of conflicts, it will just push all the process for another period, for another time, and so on. And another very important thing why the EU countries see the enlargement as very important is even to smooth their conflicts. We have all history with conflicts with each other. All the time in Balkan has been one region part of a conflict with each other. And being part of EU, they see as the solution. We had many initiatives inside our countries. The latest one was even the Open Balkan, which has been not agreed from 3 countries and agreed from 3 of us, Macedonia, Albania and Serbia, which shows us that with each other it will be a bit difficult to find the same direction. We need even the support of EU in this regard. And the Berlin process has been one of those that all the countries have been representative, and they see as a very good initiative for the solution of the region. So I'm stopping here for discussion later.
Thank you, Ledjon. And yes, now I will give the floor to Mia Petra. How does this all sound to you? And are there kind of the price? Is it worth it to have new member states? What are the costs? How do you see it?
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and possibility to be here. And it's very good to discuss about the enlargement because I don't see that too much discussed in Finland. So congratulations for the Sorsa Foundation and Matti and Jelena and others working for this one. I'm not also willing to speak on behalf of the Finnish government, so I will also not be able, and I am still a member of the European Parliament. But why I was happy to see that for this Western Balkans and EU summit in December, the Finnish government line was very much aligned with the Commission and EU line, and it is good positive note from the Finland. And I guess, as I'm still having the same electorates, the Finnish people, even I'm not yet in the parliament, I was elected last spring and I will take my seat in the parliament opposite of the street in July after 10 years as an MEP. I noticed that Finland was really emphasizing, and I sense the people are emphasizing the geopolitical situation. We do not want more countries to work on behalf of Putin, but instead seeing the worth of democracy and free states on that sense. And that is very, very deeply rooted in the Finnish people. Today also for the national caucus for the opinion polls for the European Parliament elections was 75%. The number one issue is security for these elections, and it's different from all the other European countries. So for us, this situation today is about the neighbor, and then knowing that all the neighboring eastern border countries see the situation differently than the other countries. So also seeing from there, Finland is aligned to see that enlargement should be then underlining the development in the countries. And then also that the more funding wasn't not said no, but it said that the conditionality must be bound in more, as Europe has also now practiced that same phenomena to its own funds. When we did the recovery fund, it was very well listed that this much for digitalization, this much for the green energy, and what are the applicable rules to do that. So it is not only for the enlargement, it is also to EU more, what is it doing? And then this foreign policy is very, very crucial to see that the applicant countries and the negotiations are aligned in the European foreign policy. And it is quite much to say because the foreign policy in Europe always requires unanimity if we don't change the rules. So, but still it is clear, and that is also the political message from the different parties, that it is important to share this common view and aligning on the foreign policy in this geopolitical situation. And it goes so far that even the new growth plan that we voted in the very last plenary, 2 billion more funds support non-repayable, and then 4 billion new loans for the Western Balkans. It also said the conditionality to help democracy, rule of law, corruption and the governance, but also even include namely the Russian sanctions. So I have been chairing the Russian Sanctions Committee for the past 5 months and worked on that one, and we know that the circumvention of the sanctions regime is something that is helping Russian army. The Kremlin is successful to finding other ways to buy even weapons, the Western technology. So all there, we need more partners globally, and it is very important that these 9 countries should be then aligning even the sanctions already today. But this is a comment speech, so I also want to comment something I heard in the previous panel. So if we do have this conditionality more and more, and we are giving money, and so I cannot take it and leave it from the other ear to go out that how many jobs of the cheap labor is used in the countries. So it is not wise that we are helping to build Western Balkans if Western Balkans is then using cheap labor from Nepal. I didn't know that. That was shocking news to me, and I'm happy to repeat it here. So if you have all known that before, it's only me. And if we know that, how strongly are we supporting the trade unions or other institutions to look on that cheap labor issue? And I think that should find very much ground in our policies for the next European Parliament mandate and so. And it is very much also our party, Social Democratic, view that it should not be weakened, but and strengthen the role of this one in the economical side. So it is a cost. It is cost leaking, and it is cost of deteriorating values if we look that it's okay to use cheap labor without conditions that are required from the others, and then really taking it down. So not to look only the figures to pay and gain, but then all the effects. So my point for Matti, I don't know when you wrote it, but in March, Commission gave the paper that there is no need for treaty change and still the enlargement can happen. And I think that is kind of a reality check, because it is still quite proud to say that it is precondition, because organizing or doing the treaty change would require then some countries to go for the vote, and then looking not only some former Central Eastern European countries, but then see the Netherlands, who cannot even form a government. How would they vote on the treaty change on this situation that they are very negative? And with this example, I also wanted to say that it is not only to question mark the rise of the far right in the Central and Eastern European countries, it is very much deeply rooted challenge and threat in our many Western European countries as well. The threat of the far right, or however you translate it. And they don't go hand in hand with the strengthened democratic institutions, as we can understand and see. So this challenge comes from everywhere, and that is meaning that we have to work in the existing countries and applicant countries for that. So, but I think on the budgets, the articles I read to prepare were not as good as yours, the paper from Brookings, but then lessons learned from the past was quite interesting to see what has happened. And then I just take from the summary that correlation exists between rule of law, open media, and democratic institutions. If you analyze that big enlargement from 2004, those countries who are better off, they have better institutions and rule of law, and those who grew slowlier during the membership also were not good in their rule of law and open media, for example. So the final remark is that Finland also wanted to emphasize the role of the hybrid threats, cybersecurity, critical infrastructure, and information war that we are in. And I think that really comes from our own understanding. I do not see enough Europe in the Baltic Sea, for example. It is the threat for our nature, it is threat for the oil tankers, what are going there, saying no thanks for the guiding, even the avoid the risk of the hitting the ground or leaking the oil there. And I think these are the security aspects that we have to do. And then on the political sectors also, I think the kind of transportation policies, the EU normal policies that can enhance the security are the ones that we can start doing the steps with the enlargement, and that it will make it even more available, the ties in between the countries, as mentioned here before, that how the growth will start. It depends on the tourist flows. It depends also on the trade. So the enhance the trade is the good sector. But I also must say, to finish it with a very tiny detail, that I'm happy that also it was mentioned that the roaming surcharges should be then lowered with the new countries already now as a part of this growth and stability pact for Western Balkans, as I'm still happy that I negotiated the roaming package for EU, but I have heard this idea already 5 years and not anything happening. So now it's mentioned in one of the 7 political areas for the growth and stability package with the new members. That will make life easier for the tourist and for you as well. Thank you for being able to give these comments.
Thank you. Hamza, you look like you have a comment.
It's interesting. When you mentioned about the importing workforce from Nepal, this is actually a good plot twist. That importing of foreign labor from Nepal or Turkey to work on these projects, which are funded by EU, is actually the contracts are made, conducted, and procurement forms by EBRD and by EU. So most of those projects are not done, not most, but all of them are not done by the countries, but by EBRD. So it's actually the EU policy, it's not ours. But when it comes to private citizens importing workers, like, for example, Croatia during the seasons of summer, and Albania as well, that's where people would, for their companies, they would import seasonal workers from foreign countries. And this moment of geopolitical tensions which are happening and which are basically the reason why we are speaking about this fast accession or this type of changes for Western Balkans. And I mean, it's the South Gas Corridor going through that region, directly connecting with Caucasus and Middle East, which is going through Western Balkans. And the fun thing is that the increase which you will have is, if new members are to join, will be less than 3% of what one Patriot system costs, and Ukraine is looking for 8 at the moment, and they can't get. So it's an investment. Yeah.
Thank you, Hamza. I think we have time, so before I have few questions, but I will give the floor first to you. Do we have any questions from the audience? Do you? Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
I have a very short question. Do you think, Mia Petra, that the right to import the very low-paid working force outside of EU or Turkey or Nepal or Thailand, it's just the right for the EU member countries like Finland? And so I think that let's be very honest, if we do this, and I don't want that they will do it, the candidate countries, but it's exactly the same, we shouldn't do that. And let's be then very equal. And I will say that it doesn't help that if the candidate countries are good. The best candidate countries in the previous enlargement were Poland, Hungary, and Czechs. Now they are the most difficult member countries. That's why I repeat it. And the third point is that if we only support Ukraine because of the war that Russia has made, which is terrible, of course, so they got quite soon an idea that in the matter of fact, Ukraine will be running faster than they. And we have in the past said for the Western Balkan countries that the first thing what they have to do is to stop all kind of things, and they were not all, how could I say, responsible for the wars they had in that way, I mean that I'm strongly for the enlargement, of course, but let's work hard for these open questions we still have, and let's be very honest. We have to behave in the same way what we are demanding that the candidate countries. Sorry.
Thank you, President. A very good point, and I think it's also kind of good to remember that the reason Western Balkan countries are bringing workforce from Nepal is that the EU countries have taken all of their workers, in effect, so it's kind of a chain reaction. But yeah, Mia-Petra, would you like to answer? And then Matti.
Yeah, I noticed the very same when we were talking very concretely, like renovations of the houses for the energy change, and then Germans were saying that we need more workforce, that maybe we can get some from South, and the South was saying that we don't have, maybe we can get something from the enlargement countries, and enlargement countries tell that we don't have. But is it really that we don't have, or is it just like too weak conditionality, even in our own countries? And that's why I really don't want to give up and say that because we do, so they can do it as well. I'm pretty sensitive for that one, because when I meet people from those countries, this is saying that our support for the EU membership will decline if we don't go fast. And at the same time, we see that we have learned from the past that also the countries, if you don't do a lot work on the rule of law and also for the corruption, it is not easy to enter and then to continue, or is it the willingness to continue? And also that it is good to say that yes, but I find one country with a higher corruption. It's not also the good that then you can do because you find a good European country. So it's always to target higher. This is very much a Finnish sense on the issues, that yes, target high and then take the steps that what are needed, and not to target where the lowest level in EU is, but then target higher and not use, because Greece is doing this, we do that, or because Finland is using cheap labor, we do that. So I think we have to work on the every field. But I have to, Tarja, here clarify that Poland today is not Poland last year. So Poland was mentioned many times. So just, yeah, I know you know, but it's just like to repeat here, because we worked a lot together with the Polish candidates and Polish party and colleagues, and now they are, even those who visited here on the sexual rights and the human rights, may be the most difficult part in Poland. They visited me, and I organized them to meeting several human rights bodies. And now one of the visitors is the Deputy Minister of Justice. So it is a huge and big change, and I'm looking this as an example that anything can happen in any country, that it is not lost forever, even though it was lost for during the couple of government. Give some hope to Finland as well.
Thank you, Mia-Petra. Matti,
thank you so much. I think just as a comment to this, potential exploitation of workforce in new member states or current member states, this is something that the European Union could do much more than it is doing right now. In Finland, I think we've seen that the authorities don't necessarily have the resources to supervise or to control the situation. That are the Finnish employers always following all the rules that we have set to ourselves, but maybe this is something the EU could enforce a bit more in all of the member states, including the enlargement countries. But I wanted to comment on this free movement of people and the situation right now, which was discussed in the first panel, because at the moment I think we are in a situation where some of the benefits, so-called, of the EU membership are already in place, which is mainly the free movement of people, which has, for example, led to this situation where a lot of the population has already moved to other EU countries. But the other benefits have not followed sort of in step with this development, meaning that because the countries in the Western Balkans are not full EU members, there is, for example, investment risk. The German companies are not investing in building a plant in the Western Balkans, but rather they're exploiting the not exploiting, but they are more keen to have the workforce from the Western Balkans to work in a plant in Germany. And this is something that could change if we really pursue a full integration of the Western Balkans and these other countries into the European Union, that the investments would then start to flow. And this is what happened in 2004 and 2007. But there is a crucial point here that in spite of the huge political support that we are providing to Ukraine, for example, at the moment, because of the war, as mentioned, we should not rush these things, especially in relation to the rule of law and the joint values. And we should be really careful that each of the parties, both the countries that are willing to join the EU and the countries that are already in the EU, accept and understand what are the rules, and this is why we should reform, for example, the procedures related to rule of law infringements. And I just wanted to comment to Mia Petra that this question of treaty change always comes up, and it has been the traditional Finnish position and the Commission position as well, that we should use the existing treaties as much as we can in order to avoid asking the people what they think about these treaty changes. And obviously that's the pragmatic way, and there's a lot that can be done through these existing passerelle clauses and whatever opportunities the current treaties provide. But I think as a political position, we shouldn't also avoid the difficult question of coming together as a European society and thinking that, okay, are these rules really the rules that we want right now, or should we change some of them, and should we also embrace the possibility that the people might sometimes say no? I think that's part of democracy as well, and then we live by that decision and design something else. But we shouldn't treat treaty change as a big elephant in the room that we shouldn't be even talking about, and it should be in the cards as well when we're talking about reforming the European Union.
Thank you. Do you have a comment, Ledjon?
Yeah, I want to add something regarding with the movement of people from other countries to the Western Balkan countries. It's a phenomena that it's growing daily. The phenomena that a lot of people that come from the Eastern Asia countries, they just take a working permit in Albania, they stay 1 month and they go to the EU countries. So it's just a transition, the Albania for them. So in this regard, what I'm saying is that it's even for Albanian a very big task to start thinking about the social life of migrants, because it's something that we have never thought till now, because all the time we think only how to treat the people that are leaving the country, the Albanians that are leaving the country, but not those that are coming to Albania, because they need schools, they need support, household, and so on. In this regard, this is one thing that Albania has to think. And from the other side, even how to manage these people not to leave Albania and to go to the EU countries, because they do some contracts in Albania for the labor market there, but they leave after 1 month, which means that we have to have good institutional reforms in our country. But I think that if we will wait that Western Balkan countries to be ready, the story has shown that in 30 years, the GDP hasn't changed. It has been all the time 30 to 50% of the EU countries, even a bit small changes, but in general it has been the same. Even if we see all the indexes, the Western Balkan countries have never competed with EU members. They have been always down, even in democracy, in progress of life, in government, and so on. Which means that if we want to increase all this institutional performance in our countries, we have to be part of it, even with the cost that it will have. Thanks.
Thank you. We still have 3 minutes. Would anyone have a short question? No. Okay. I wanted to maybe quickly to hear your thoughts, as Matti mentioned, the kind of staged accession or gradual integration the EU has, the kind of the process has become throughout the years more and more gradual. but the actual kind of staged accession proposal is done between a Serbian and Brussels-based think tank. And as Matti mentioned, it has kind of four parts, two of the pre-accession stages and two of post-accession stages. And so I wanted to hear your thoughts about that. How do you feel about the model? Mia, Petra, and maybe Ledjon also, because I know that from some parts in the Western Balkans, it's considered as yet another waiting room. So yeah.
Yes, as the challenges are very big, also because a very big country, Ukraine, is on the taking the steps, would take like 20% of the existing budget, and EU needs to find a new ways to do the budget. We don't have very much hints yet because it's only to 2028 we start the next 7 years budget, 1.2 trillion, now thousands of millions, if we put it in the figures that we can a little bit think, for the 7 years. If that money needs to fund existing challenges, existing funds, it needs to fund also the security, enhanced security. It has to fund something that we are not afraid to change the treaties. So business as usual scenario. There's not much for the enlargement. So then this goes hand in hand. So I see more the budget going hand in hand with the enlargement than the treaty alone. So, but if we take the budget needs to be reformed, then the treaties will be reformed. And I'm not personally against that one. I have been even sitting in the committee of the treaty changes. So we have a plan ready from the European Parliament, even watered down in the plenary, but a lot of ideas how to do it, how to answer the small country versus big country, but very theoretically difficult challenges. So on these steps by steps, it's maybe good to see that there are steps even after the accession. That would be maybe the message for the applicant countries, the motivation. But then also seeing that very concretely already we have opened the trade, we will open the trade, and we see the challenges also step by step. Agriculture could be talk for another seminar alone, but I noticed that working in the Committee of Trade that we talk about eggs for a whole week. That can we give the Ukraine to import eggs without border payments freely? And then the answer was that no, because then the egg farmers in Poland cannot pay that. And the Poland, who has been one of the biggest supporters of the Ukraine by the military equipment they have, say that we cannot afford it. So this also, I think, the step-by-step means for our side also challenges and difficulties come step by step. So for me, it is positive because that means movement forward. And it doesn't come that overnight you are a member and you can have the flags and then something else. So also what is the appetite for the membership? It should be kind of realistic. But then then it comes to politics, and then you have the superstar leaders who might turn away and then challenge the democratic support. So I'm positive, but it has to be a dialogue as well.
Thank you, Mia. Petra, Ledjon, if I could get a super short answer.
Okay, I'll stop in the summit of Berlin Progres done in Tirana in 16th of October 2023. 2 days before that, we have a very big seminar activity with NGOs from EU and not EU countries regarding the process, the stage process. And if we speak about the process itself, okay, it has benefits, but we have to work a lot in the understanding of people. So they have to understand that it's not another stage or time for them to be part of the EU, but is a process that will fulfill step by step the criteria. And the second one that has been mentioned a lot is even the participation of Western Balkans in this stages, because what has been discussed so far is always done between EU countries, and none of the Western Balkan countries or other countries that want to be part of these meetings and activities, not having the right of vote, but to be part of it, so they can speak about their things, how have been developed, and even to discuss with the people in their countries and to explain why those are happening.
Thank you, Ledjon. Unfortunately, I personally would want to continue the discussions, but we have to end. From my part, I want to kind of thank all of you, President Halonen and all the other panelists for joining us today. And I think these are discussions we should keep having, especially now with European elections and everything happening globally and in Europe as well. So thank you all for participating. And just a reminder, the migration report can be found over there in the back. And me and Mattis and mine report will be done next week, so we will send it to all of you. Thank you so much.